She is a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congresswoman, thank you for coming on. So Republicans, including Senator Josh Hawley, have been calling for Ghislaine Maxwell to come before Congress and testify in public. Is this something you support?
Absolutely, Pamela. We think that the files should be released. We should have testimonies from Maxwell. This is something that Trump supporters for years called for. And now all of a sudden, the Trump DOJ, Trump himself, is refusing to provide the kind of transparency that he was calling for before he knew what was in the files. And so that leads to the question of what are they trying to hide? And I think there should be transparency regardless of who is implicated. And I think the president's switch and bait and switch on this has been very telling in terms of why does he not want these files released? Why is it that the public cannot know about the thing that he called for himself, amongst many others?
Well, some of your Republican colleagues, like Lauren Boebert, are calling for a special counsel to invest the handling of the Epstein files. Do you think that that is needed?
Well, I think that the thing that Congress can do right away is there is a discharge petition from Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna that calls for the release of the files. That, I think, is probably the most important thing that we should do right now. And we should look at all the other ways that we can bring about some transparency on this. I'm not sure I trust a special counsel that's appointed by Pam Bondi, who seems to be involved in the cover-up. So I guess that's the question. How do we get these files released? How do we make sure that the American public sees what is in these files, including that client list that apparently was there and now is no longer there?
Well, and DOJ says there isn't a client list. And I know that Pam Bondi said what she said. Our sources tell us that when she was asked about the client list, she was talking about something that was already publicly available that was handed to influencers. But I just want to follow up. If you see such a need to investigate this, why didn't you raise it during the Biden administration? I mean, we couldn't find that you made any public comments about Epstein in previous administrations.
Well, I would have been happy to raise it then as well. Frankly, we were focused on so many different pieces, but I have been one of the Democrats that has been consistent on what I call out Republican presidents for and Democratic presidents for, whether it is FISA, reforms that we need, whatever it has been. I've been pretty consistent. War powers. I've criticized Joe Biden just as I'm criticizing Donald Trump. I think transparency is not something that should happen only when you have a Republican president. It is something that we need for both Democratic and Republican presidents.
So then why didn't you call for more transparency earlier during the Biden administration? I'm just trying to better understand why you are so intent now on calling for this.
Well, I think I gave it the same focus that I'm giving it now. We haven't, I think I've released one tweet on this and you wanted to talk about it, so I'm happy to talk about it here, but it certainly hasn't been the focus. I'm just responding to what I think is a massive switch from the Trump administration around this issue. My focus has been on the big bad betrayal bill, and I will continue to focus on that. But yes, I think that this information should have been released under the Biden administration. It should be released under the Trump administration.
And I know you have your part. You said you put out a tweet. There are other Democrats as well calling for this, and Republicans, we should note, including the Speaker of the House, saying there should be more transparency. But President Trump, for his part, is just focusing, in large part, not just on Democrats. He is focusing also on his allies, but he is saying that this is BS made up by Democrats. He's calling some of his supporters weaklings for buying into it, saying he no longer wants their support. What do you make of that?
I think he's hiding something, and he's just pouring fuel on the fire. Look, most of us didn't start calling for some of this until the president started denying that there was anything to release, until Pam Bondi denied that there was anything to release. And so it is the hypocrisy of this president as he says, oh, all of a sudden now there's nothing that we need to deal with, when he himself has called for this before. So I think he's just pouring fuel on the fire of what is it that he's hiding that he feels the need to now criticize his own base of people, by the way, Republicans, as you point out, including the House Speaker, who say, yeah, let's just release it. If there's nothing to hide, just release it. Don't make excuses by saying, why are people focusing on this? They're focusing on it because your base made it an issue. You yourself called for it. And it now looks like you are hiding something. So if you've got nothing to hide, release the files.
And he has said that he was briefed by Pam Bondi. He said it was short and that he's been given no indication that he was in there. But of course, like I pointed out, both Republicans and Democrats are calling for more transparency, which is clearly irking the president. I want to get your response to this conservative radio host we spoke to who mentioned your name. His name is Jason Rantz, and he is arguing Democrats are acting in bad faith. So I want to make sure you can respond. Here's what he said on the show.
They're doing it because they think it's going to create more distrust within the movement. Ultimately, I think that actually hurts them, because I don't know how many MAGA base members are going to say, yes, I support what Pramila Jayapal and Eric Swalwell are saying. I'm on their side. So actually, I think they're hurting their own cause.
How do you respond to that?
Well, good, then he shouldn't worry about it. I mean, look, we're all speaking to the bases we have. It's important for my base to hear me talk about transparency. I think I have a lot of Republicans. They come to my town halls, they listen to what I say. They don't necessarily agree with everything I say, but they do agree on transparency, and they don't like a lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing, from kidnapping people on the streets and disappearing them to refusing to provide transparency around this case. So Jason and others should feel perfectly fine then with my calling for this, because they shouldn't have to worry about it if they think that nobody's listening.
And I'm going to go to the big, beautiful bill in just a second. But do you think your base cares about the Jeffrey Epstein stuff? I mean, I know you say they want transparency, but do you get the sense they care about this issue?
I think what they care about is corruption. And there are so many different ways to look at the corruption of this White House, and they do care about authenticity and honesty. And, you know, I think there were a lot of people that are good people who trusted that Trump said he was going to help decrease prices for working people, that he was going to make life better, that he was going to stop inflation on day one, that he was going to stop wars around the world and the United States engagement. And they're looking at this as another example of how Trump lied to them, how he said one thing, but he's now arguing for another thing. And to me, that's the corruption and the hypocrisy are the things that are making people question this president, even if they voted for him. And I have, as I said, people in my district, people across the country who may not agree with me on a bunch of other things, but they do agree that they are disappointed, angry even, with what is happening, including, you know, the fact that this big bad betrayal bill stripped healthcare, is going to strip healthcare from 17 million Americans, or strip nutrition assistance, that life isn't getting better for themselves. And so that's the context in which I think it matters. Certainly transparency as an issue matters, but it's this broader issue of corruption and hypocrisy.
And I want to just follow up on the bill, and certainly the CBO, I believe it said that around 12 million could lose Medicaid over several years. There's some new CNN polling that shows more than 60% of Americans oppose his big, beautiful bill of tax and spending cuts. But when you delve into the numbers here, they actually approve by a 29-point margin of the tax cuts that the bill permanently extended, something many Democrats have been speaking out against. What do you think of that? Do you think Democrats need to rethink their messaging at all on this?
No, I think we have been, and I'll speak for myself, I have been tying the fact that healthcare cuts, and it's 12 million on Medicaid, but don't forget there's an additional 4 to 5 million that will lose healthcare coverage and see their costs increase because of the Affordable Care Act restrictions that are here as well. So that's where we get the 16 to 17 million. I think what is important is for people to understand two things. Number one, that they are going to be paying more for health care. They're going to be poorer and sicker, right? And why is that? Because $5 trillion in the largest transfer of wealth from poor and working people is going to the wealthiest millionaires, billionaires, and corporations. So that connection is what I have been emphasizing over and over again. It is about making Americans poorer, but you have to ask why. Why would they do this? Because their constituents are going to get poorer and sicker in their districts. But they're doing it because they want to help the millionaires and billionaires and big corporations get another yacht, get more profits, maybe have another luxury wedding that costs $50 million in another country. This is the thing that Americans of all ideological stripes are so furious about, is that wealth is getting concentrated, power is getting concentrated, and even their Republican members of Congress are not doing what is in the interest of their constituents. They're doing what's in the interest of the lobbying billionaire class.
Congresswoman Jayapal, thank you so much for your time and for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Pamela.